Welcome, welcome, welcome back to From Middle Class to Millions. I want to start off by telling you about the webinar that's free that I'm offering on Wednesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. How to be financially confident in 2026. This is an encore presentation. I did this webinar in December and I need to do it again. It's obvious that I need to do it again because there was such a great turnout in December. So many people had so many questions. We were on for 2 hours because I was determined to stay on to answer everybody's questions. And so this is an opportunity for you to speak to a multimillionaire. An opportunity that a lot of people don't get, an opportunity that I think is not about me, but it's about you. I understand that people have questions. They want to know what's going on with their finances. They no longer want to be in the dark. They want to know not only how to start, but to look at what they actually have in existence right now and understand, is this going to last? How much is it going to grow? How is it performing? I don't know what's going on. I think people want answers to the questions. They don't want it to be complicated. There's so much information out there. They want to talk to a live person, no Googling, no chat GPTing. I want to know someone who's done this thing, and I want them to help me do my thing. Right? Because they want the lifestyle that they want. Let's not lie. Some of you guys are high maintenance. Some of you guys are fancy. Some of you guys like that stuff. Some of you are going to live to 100 and the money has to last. It has to last at least until you drop dead. And it definitely, for some of you, you want to have generational wealth. You want to pass stuff on to your kids and your grandkids. This is important stuff. I'm going to be talking about it on Wednesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. You have to register in order to get the link to get in the room. I want to see you there. I want you to participate. I know this is important to you. It's important to me. It's important to all of my clients. So definitely show up for yourself. This is a great way to kick off 2026. You'll have a plan of action that you can follow and you can get your questions answered. I hope to see you there. All right, today I have a fantastic episode I'm so excited about. But first and foremost, it is January. I want to know, are you guys going away? The other day I was talking to some folks on my team and they told me that they're going to the Dominican Republic. And I was like, oh, what? And then I sent something to my massage therapist. I just love saying that I have a massage therapist. We have a very personal relationship. She and I are lockstep. Like, I see her all the time. I love it. I love getting massages. That is very important to me. I like spending money on that, amongst other things. And so I sent her a message about something and I was like, oh, they have this in Whole Foods. I don't know if they have it in our town, but you should check it out. And she's like, oh, I'm still stuck in the Caribbean. And I was like, wait, what? So that to me, follow me here, stay with me. That to me was a sign that I need to get to the Caribbean because everybody's going and I haven't signed up or found a trip or done anything yet. So there is going to be an episode of this recorded with the sound of the ocean in the background at some time in the near future, because I can't be the only one who's stuck in this frigid temperature and weather right now. I know it's going to start playing on me and I got to do something about it. So I'm just warning you that if you hear the ocean waves or the Caribbean Sea or whatever it is in the background, think nothing of it. I'm still thinking of you. I'm still thinking of ways for you to figure out how to make your money work harder for you than you do for it, and so that you can spend it on the things that are important to you. All right. So this week's episode, I want to share kind of a case study with my clients. And what's going to be interesting about this week's episode versus next week's episode is that this week's episode, the clients are in their 30s, and next week's episode, the clients are in their 50s. And I want you to see that the parallels between these two folks are like glaring. Right? And so this is why I always stress it doesn't matter what your age is. It's your money stage that determines what you do, the decisions you make, why you make them, how you make them. Now, in this case, I can tell you that the folks in their 30s, that the ones that I'm going to talk about today are making certain decisions that will enable them not to become people in their 50s who are now playing catch up. Now, the folks that are in their 50s that I'm going to talk about next week, they're not playing catch up in that true sense. But you can see how some of the things that these guys in their 30s are going to circumvent will prevent me from having to do some of the work that I'm going to do with the clients in their 50s, right? And that's why, yes, does it make a difference if you start sooner? Sure. But it is not so much your age. It's really about the decisions that you make, how you make decisions, what you do in the face of challenges. And so learning this skill set, right? Learning this skill set in the 30s is going to make such a tremendous difference for these guys that it's going to be fascinating to see where they'll be in their 40s and their 50s. And I love this for them. I really do. And this is why I do what I do, because I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so good. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on with this couple. I haven't made up names for them, so I'm just going to say husband and wife. I know, basic, but sometimes I'm not that creative. Okay. I want to get the message out to you, and I didn't come up with some names. Okay. So it's okay. It's okay. You're going to get the point. What is going on right now with these folks is that everything is important all at once. Okay. Especially at this stage in their life. It is not something that they're imagining. It's true. I can relate to this. I was there. I was in this place where you're, dealing with your careers. You're dealing with young kids. You're dealing with the business. You're dealing with debt. You may have aging parents to think about. Retirement is in the distance, not that far away, but it's still out there. It's not like you're looking at it and it's like 5 or 10 years away, but you're thinking about it. And this isn't a time of life where people are making bad decisions per se, but they're making really fast decisions. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how at this stage in your life, you can have a lot of competing priorities, and why making a quick knee-jerk decision, it feels like it's going to solve all your problems. And when in reality, sometimes if you can just slow down a little bit, it can save you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars later. Okay. So let's talk about it. All right. I'm going to talk about husband and wife. All right. Like I said, they're a couple. They're in their mid to late 30s, and they have 2 young kids. Okay. Husband has a traditional income, a W-2 earner. He gets his steady paycheck every 2 weeks. Wife is an entrepreneurial earner. Okay, so she has her entrepreneurial income. So obviously, as you know, as an entrepreneur, you aren't necessarily pulling in the same amount of money every 2 weeks. However, when you work with me, you are, because I don't like that instability. I think it throws people off course. They then get fixated on the fact that they don't know how much money they're going to make. And because they don't know how much money they're going to make, there's an inability to plan, right? And so I have to take that off the table for them so that they can see that they can plan, and that how they can go about doing this so it doesn't feel like this roller coaster that where they have no control over their emotions and the regularity and the income. And so we take all of that off of the table so that we can stabilize everything. So the 2 of them are really smart. They're really organized. They're doing a lot of things right. Okay. They went away for the holidays and visiting family. And so, it was a great time. It's always a great time to go away for the holidays for them. They get to see the extended family. It's amazing, but they're tired. When you have young kids and you're traveling and you're not in your home and you're not doing your routine, even though you're having a great time, it's like you need the vacation after the vacation. So they came back and they're physically drained. They're physically drained, emotionally full, but physically drained. So we were talking and they said, one of the things I like to do is level set at the beginning of the year. We didn't have an opportunity to do it at the end of the year, which is the best time to do it. So, it was the beginning of the year and I was like, okay, what do we have going on right now in terms of expenditures for 2026. Now, a lot of the times people kind of have an idea in their mind that they want to do this, they want to do that, but they don't really think it through entirely. And so I like to get folks in the habit of not only putting these things out into the universe, saying what they want to do, but having the discussions about it. And then, of course, my favorite, planning for it, right? Planning for the emotional load, the physical load, the finances, everything that goes along with the things that they want to do. So these guys said that they wanted to pay down their debt. They wanted to buy a second car, and they thought they want to move closer to their children's school. Okay, so those were the three things: pay down the debt, buy a second car, and move. And when you think about this, none of these things sound unreasonable, right? Like, you want to pay down your debt, you need a second car, right? They're two adults here, they've got two young kids. And, all of this commuting, let's move to somewhere that's closer to the school. We like the school, we're committed to it. The kids are going to go to the school for a really long time. Maybe that makes more sense. But what happens is, when people have these competing priorities, they try to do all of them at one time. And when you try to do all of these things at once, that's how you quietly derail your future. Making one of these things and not doing it correctly throws people off course for decades. And it's hard to see, but this is exactly why I said, when I'm looking at my 30-year-old client, I can foresee how any of these decisions can derail them. And then they become my 50-year-old client, but with a lot of stuff that they got to clean up and playing a lot of catch up. Now, again, when you're in your 50s, there are ways in which you can do that. It's not like, oh, well, you messed it up in your 30s, you're screwed, get out of here. No, there are ways that we can clean it up in your 50s, and you have some other levers that you can pull that you don't have in your 30s. So it is possible. However, if I can circumvent and help them circumvent any of these things that can derail them, well, then shoot, yes, that is what I want to do. So let's look at what's happening here, because now we say that there's these three competing priorities. We know what they are, but there's an emotional divide. All right. And this is really fascinating when I work with couples, and this is how they tend to get stuck, right? Because I have husband, and we'll describe him as more of the long-term thinker, right? He's focused on future goals. Like, he's really focused on retirement. He's really focused on opportunity costs. Like, if we do A, then we're missing out on B. If we do B, we're missing out on C. Like, what do we have to give up to do any one of these things, right? And he's very concerned about lifestyle inflation. He understands that they have been and are and will probably continue to make more and more money, but you have to make sure that he keeps his eye on their lifestyle growing, even in the face of their incomes growing, right? He's a spreadsheet guy. He knows his math, but he also fears that he could regret anything that happens later if he makes some mistakes right now. So that's husband. Wife. She is very sensitive to burnout. She's burnt out before. So historically, she's been very clear to me that she's burnt out. She does not want to do that again. And so she's very, very on top of that. And she's also overloaded. So her focus more so is on her time, her energy, and the daily logistics. She's carrying a lot of the parental load in terms of the day-to-day because she has the entrepreneurial income, right? So she has that level of flexibility that husband doesn't have because he goes into the office, okay, every single day. So she's not dramatic at all. She's tired, though. She's exhausted, and she wants relief. And she's looking for solutions to some of this physical and emotional exhaustion. And that's understandable. And this is why I was very clear that, like, look, this isn't primarily a money problem. This is a nervous system problem. I could see that immediately. And this tends to be the case a lot of the times when people are in this life stage, right? When they have these young children, when they're doing this shuttling to school, when they're, doing bath night, reading, homework, blah, blah, blah. This part of life really isn't enabling you to focus on the money stuff, you're focusing on your own nervous system. So when people feel that they're exhausted, everything feels urgent. Okay? Everything feels urgent. I got to do this. I got to do it now. I got to do it now. And the big purchases that show up feel like solutions to your problem. If I just get this, this problem will go away. But they don't think about the long-term consequences. Like you can't think about the long-term consequences when your nervous system is all jacked up and everything feels urgent and you see a solution, at least you think it's a solution to this problem, and throw money at it. You don't even think about how this is going to impact you down the road. But those exact knee-jerk decisions are freaking expensive. Okay? They're expensive and they will cost you. And that's kind of where I weasel my way into the relationship. I want these guys to have these discussions. I want them to voice what their priorities are, but I want us collectively to think about how we can come up with solutions that don't impact their future negatively. So what I tend to see is folks say, okay, we need a car. We need the second car. We should just move. Like, this will make life easier. If we get these two things, at least that'll make life easier. And so when we brought up the car discussion, I said, well, let's think about this. We know a car isn't just a payment, even though that's what people think. Okay, if I get a car and it's $450 a month, and then, okay, we can do that. We can do that. A car isn't just payment. And this is the skill set that I want folks to learn. I want you to think through everything. The car salesman is going to tell you it's just a payment, but you and I both know it's insurance, it's gas, it's maintenance, there are repairs. Same thing with the second home. The second home isn't going to be a smaller home. The second home, or moving to a new home, not a second home, moving to a new home, they're not moving to a smaller home, right? That's not the case. They're moving to a home that's closer to the school and subsequently in a better neighborhood. So now guess what else happens? Okay, can you make the mortgage payment? Sure. But what about the utilities? What about the property taxes in this new neighborhood? What about the upkeep? Because now you've got a little bit more property, but does everybody have a landscaper? Do you have the time to ensure that everything looks appropriate on your property? What about the time? Just the time in and of itself to find the place, maintain the place, all of that, right? So sometimes buying something to solve an inconvenience, no matter how big that inconvenience feels, often creates a bigger problem later. And so I'm not there in this discussion to squash their priorities or to kill their ideas. I'm there to help them think it through, map it out, and to understand the implications. To pause for 1 second and understand what decision A means and how it impacts them when it comes time to do decision B. Because the decisions feel really small right now. They feel small and they feel like the solutions, but these are the exact decisions and reasons why people end up being behind on retirement, why they then freak out in their 40s and 50s and are struggling to play catch up, and wondering why, well, we've made so much money, but we don't have enough saved or invested. That's not what I want for them. That's not what I want for any of you. What I want for this couple, and what we did when we were in our session, is I was like, okay, we need to slow this down, but I'm not going to shut it down. Like, that was my intention. Slowing it down, but not shutting it down. So I'm not saying, no, you can't do that. No, you can't have a car. You can't move, tough it out. Like, the math is saying no to you. So sorry. No, that is not the approach. It's not helpful. And honestly, nobody wants that. These guys came to me for solutions about all of their money, right? These aren't people who are struggling. These are people who want to have a good life, who are living a good life, who likes nice things. So I had to get to the root of, okay, let's talk about how we can separate out these permanent decisions versus temporary solutions, right? Because what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve here? What's the problem that we're trying to solve? When I came to the second car, there was a lot of talk about missing out on opportunities to do stuff that would feed her spirit. Because they only had one car, for example, she wasn't able to go to a particular class on a certain day because, she would need the car to do that. But then he wouldn't be able to do certain things to take their kids to certain extracurricular activities. How could they possibly do both? Right? And when we broke down, okay, how often do you want to do this particular class? And it was like once a week. And I said, what about if you Uber to this class? Now, I know what people are going to think. Oh my gosh, that's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. Now, I said to her, she lives in one major city. I said, if you Ubered to the next major city where you lived, it still wouldn't cost as much as buying a car. If you did that once a week, every week, for every single week in 2026, it still wouldn't even come close to the cost of the car payment, the gas, the maintenance, blah, 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 blah. It's important that she has this time for herself to do the activity that will fill her, right? And feed her. But she would block it out for a $20, $30 Uber ride, which I was like, absolutely not. Why not entertain that idea? And, she was like, oh, I could still do it. This is still something that interests me. It gives me an opportunity. And I'm like, listen, someone's driving you, right? Like someone's driving you. You don't even have to worry about traffic or timing or da-da-da. Someone's driving you. And then as soon as you're ready, someone's there to pick you up. When we looked at buying the house, we talked about, okay, there's a lot of commuting right now, going back and forth, and it's taking away from the time that she has to work. And that's making her feel anxious. She's losing so much time. And she's like, I got a lot of things to do. And I was like, okay, let's entertain maybe a co-working space that you go to a couple of days a week. Couple of days a week. This is a business expense. Let's try that. And those could be a longer working day where you can go into that co-working space. It's got to be nice. It's got to be something where you can, engage with your clients. You go there a couple of days a week. That will take some of that pressure off of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all this time commuting. I wanted her to understand that there's solutions to the problems that she's feeling that don't necessarily have to impact their future, but can take off the pressure and the stress right now. And I wanted her to bake in the rest. And I wanted her to bake in the creative outlets on purpose. And I also wanted her to know, as well as the husband, we're not saying no forever. I'm not about that. I'm saying we're not saying no from this frenetic, anxious place. We don't want to make decisions when we're in that state. It just ends up being a fast decision that can be destructive, that can lead to regret. Also, it was important to note that we can come up with solutions for maybe one or two of these things that could be temporary fixes, but we could still do the third thing. Like, that's the thing. It's not no forever, first of all. And second of all, okay, one of them, let's say, for example, we may need to buy the car. Okay, let's do that. The other two things, we're going to have to come up with other solutions. What people tend to do is they tend to do all the three things. And it's like, wait a second, what? I don't want, the relief to come from a fast decision that later becomes a regret. I want my clients to understand that they can use systems to think through these things over willpower, right? So it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I got to will myself not to do this. No, if you have systems in place, when everything is emotional and all the decisions feel heavy, systems can create some, predictability They can allow for end dates so that we can say, okay, yeah, no, it's not right now, but it's this time. This is when we'll do it. That creates safety. I help my clients clear out the priorities. Okay. They know what their priorities are, but I don't want 3 number 1 priorities. We have to have 1 number 1 priority, then a number 2, then a number 3. And it's hard for folks. But for a lot of folks, they've never really sat down and said, okay, what is number 1 and how are we going to get there? Then when can we do number 2 and number 3? Because it's heavy, it's fast, and it leads to regret. That's what we're trying to avoid. So when we have those clear priorities and we know that, okay, we're putting money towards retirement or investments or savings, when we know we have debt that we need to pay off and we have a timeline and a strategy and an actual end date, we can also build in spending because that's important. We need to spend for things that protect our energy. And in this case, with my clients, her hobbies. And we build in money for those hobbies. So we build in money for the Uber. We build in money for the workspace. That's important because if she is full, she can be more creative at work. She can serve her clients better. Like all of that is important. So spending money on those things isn't a quote unquote waste. In fact, it's a necessity. And once that happens, once you can see that clearly, then the resentment drops. And then the couple can compromise. It can become possible because now they can have these conversations and nobody feels deprived forever. So I like to acknowledge what people are doing. I see how hard my clients are working. I, for one, as you guys all know, I am not about deprivation. I'm not. But I am really focused on making sure that their ultimate goals are kept top of mind. And I want to help them see that if this is a permanent decision that they're making right now while they're exhausted, while they're tired, while they're stressed, while they're fighting, from burnout, for example, they'll spend years paying for that decision. This isn't just about money. It's preservation of self for each individual in the relationship, and it's preservation of the relationship. I realize and recognize that this is the stage, especially at this stage of your life when you have these small kids and you're focused on your career and everything else that's going on, that people can either get intentional or they drift into that financial regret stage. They don't realize it yet because it shows up a decade later or 2 decades later. And so what I'm offering them is you don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be clear. You do need to work on one priority at a time, and you need systems that support real life, okay? Systems that support your true existence, and it's personal. That's why it's personal finance. That's why ChatGPTing and Googling it isn't going to work. So I loved the discussion with them. They loved the discussion with them. They say they talk about money more now than they ever had before. And this is another skill that they're learning on how to make these decisions because there are going to be more of them. They're in the mid to late 30s. They've got years of these decisions, but they will not look back and say, oh, wow, because we bought the house in 2026, now we don't know if we'll ever be able to retire. No, that's not going to happen. So I want to ask you to ask yourselves, like, what decisions are you trying to make right now And are you making them from a place where you're tired, where you're burnt out, where you're exhausted? Is this truly the time to make this decision? Because if you do have a decision like that to make, I want to encourage you to slow down a little bit. Look for the alternatives. Really talk it through before you act. This is exactly the kind of thing, the kind of conversations that I have with my clients that helps them navigate through their money so that they don't run into a situation where they have regret. Sure, we talk about investing and what to invest in and how much to put aside and how much they'll have and da-da-da-da. But none of that matters if they do a couple or sometimes 3 of these big decisions that could impact those investments, right? We want to strike that balance. Especially when we're in this full, messy, beautiful stage of life. I've been there. I've done it. I've helped many clients do it. And just like so many of my clients, these guys are on track to be multimillionaires. And I want it to stay that way. All right. I will be back next week. As always, please, please, please share this podcast with anybody you know that uses money. I hope you show up at the webinar next Wednesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. I will put the link in the show notes for you to register. You have to register in order to attend. It's going to be fabulous. You're going to love it, and you're going to get some great information out of it. Next week, I will be back with the other case study of the folks in their 50s. Thanks for listening. Bye.